Okay, so today we're going to do a comparison between the barbell press lockout and the kettlebell press lockout. It's an issue I've noticed some of my clients have had, especially during this time when a lot of gyms are closed and people are still working out at home using kettlebells, and they're confused about where the lockout position is in the kettlebell versus the barbell. So I wanted to clarify that, do a little video. The first thing you have to remember as principles is that the shoulder joint, the glenohumeral joint, I can't actually touch it because it's deep inside there, but we essentially want the center of mass of what we're lifting to lock out over the shoulder joint. In a barbell press, that's pretty simple. The center of mass is somewhere in between your two hands. So you're going to lock it out directly over the shoulder joint. In a kettlebell, it's a little trickier because the center of mass of the kettlebell is actually behind your hand. So I want to show how this plays out with lighter and heavier kettlebells, as well as then comparing to the barbell. So let's start with a lighter kettlebell. Okay, so you can see here I've got a 16 kilo kettlebell, 35 pounds. The most I can press with one arm is over 100 pounds. So I can do whatever I want with this kettlebell, and I'm going to illustrate that. So I can technically lock it out here. Now notice the angle between my hand and my shoulder joint. The reason I can do that is not because that's actually a stable lockout position, but because it's so light that I can get away with anything there. You obviously notice, or maybe we should just define a stable lockout position as one in which you have maximal muscular and skeletal support for the position. It's actually one of the big things that distinguishes a main lift from a accessory lift is that the main lifts have objectively identifiable lockout points. So you can understand why if I was holding 200 pounds, I couldn't hold it like this, right? Because what this would do is it would pull me this way. I can get away with it with 35 pounds, but the actual lockout position is more like here. But I can get away with here or here or here, but the actual lockout position still has to be directly over the shoulder joint. Contrast that now with 70 pounds, I believe. Yeah, this is 70 pounds, just about. So it's a little heavier. I won't be able to hold it out there. So you're going to see if I try to lock it out too far forward, I'm not going to be able to. I still will be able to lock it out a little bit forward though. So let's take a look. I can't really hold it here for very long, but I could hold it here. This is still forward. Actual lockout is about here. But notice my arm still has a little bit of an angle. Even in the correct lockout position for that, there was a little bit of an angle in my arm, which I'll show again here. Right, see that little bit of an angle? The reason that exists is because the kettlebell, unlike the barbell, has the center of mass outside my hand. So although I'm holding the handle here, most of the kettlebell, most of the mass is outside my hand, and my arm itself is a relatively inconsequential weight relative to the weight of the thing. So the combined center of mass of my arm and the kettlebell is mostly the kettlebell when it's 70 pounds, which is why I made the distinction earlier between a heavy and a light kettlebell. So I have to lock it out where the center of mass of kind of the arm kettlebell combined is directly over or almost directly over my shoulder joint. The heavier it is, the more directly over it needs to be. Let's contrast that now with the barbell. All right, so you can see here I've got a barbell in my hands, and I'm just going to go ahead and do a regular press. Notice that it locks out with my arms directly over the shoulder joint. There isn't really an angle to the line. The line is pretty much straight up to my arm. Now again, with a lighter barbell, I could get away with locking it out here. I could get away with locking it out here, but with a heavier barbell, it's not going to be stable any point except for right about here. And the reason why is fairly obvious, right? If this is 300 pounds, well, I've pressed 300 pounds, but again, if I'm trying to hold 300 pounds here, it's obvious it's going to quickly pull me over there. I can't get away with that with a heavy weight. So it has to be here because the center of mass is inside my hand, so a straight line from down up from my shoulder joint is the obvious place for the lockout. So again, to wrap up here, the lockout for any proper lockout for any overhead position lift is going to be the combined center of mass of what you're lifting directly over the shoulder joint, at least in terms of the sagittal plane, right? Going this way. You can't lock it out here, you can't lock it out here, it won't be stable. You might be able to get away with that at a light weight, but at a heavy weight, you won't be able to lock it out, it will crumble. So directly over the shoulder joint. The difference between a barbell and a kettlebell lockout is the kettlebell, most of the center of mass is actually behind your arm. So if you lock out here, the center of mass is going to be directly over the shoulder joint. If you actually went like this, like a barbell, the center of mass of that would actually be behind you. So we don't want to see a big angle like this, but a small angle in the arm is actually appropriate for a kettlebell press lockout. Contrast to a barbell press lockout, because the weight of the center of mass of the system is in between your hands, in the sagittal plane, it's exactly where your hands are. You're always going to lock out here. Now, there are some people who have some shoulder flexibility, shoulder mobility issues, who may not be able to achieve a perfect barbell lockout. It's going to be a case-by-case basis to figure out whether or not you can actually do the press or you need to do some kind of alternative version. Most people can do it, even if you have a little bit of a flexibility issue. Like if you can only lock out your press here, you can still press. If you can only lock out your press here, you probably can't press. You're probably better off doing an alternative version, either with an incline press or a landmine press, something of that nature. But most people can do the press, even if they can't achieve a perfect lockout position. But most people can achieve a perfect lockout position. Most people, certainly with a few weeks of work on it, can achieve a perfect lockout position. Very, very few people I've encountered with a little bit of work can't get to an acceptable lockout position. Like I said, even about here, you can still press pretty heavy. It's just that we can't really have a heavy press out there. But again, the idea is the combined center of mass should be directly over the shoulder joint to achieve lockout. How that plays out is going to be different depending on where their combined center of mass is. In a kettlebell, the combined center of mass is actually behind your arm, so your arm will be a little bit forward of the lockout position, so the center of mass will shoot a straight line down to your shoulder. In a barbell, the center of mass is in between your hands, it's within your hands, so it'll be a straight line down from your arm. Your arm itself should be straight at lockout. That's really all I wanted to clarify today. Thanks for joining.